Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are on Conversations with Carnivores. Today, my guest is Laura. She's going to be sharing with us about her journey. And let's kick off. So the first question that I usually will ask people is, how long have you been carnivore?
That's a good question. So I would say approximately about 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And it started off rocky. So that's what I say, approximately about 4 years. So maybe 3 years strong, 4 years struggle.
Yeah.
The first year.
So tell us about that. What was the struggle in that first year for you?
Overload of information. So trying to get everyone's ideas and thoughts and compounding them. I think I went down every single rabbit hole that there was, and I could never sustain it. So 1 minute I'm adding sugar and fruits and the next minute I'm not, and I just really struggled to stick with it because I was trying to incorporate so many different things and making it hard for myself.
Yep. That's really interesting. So I'm curious because I think carnivore isn't necessarily mainstream. Like, when you're thinking about, changing your health, you don't go, oh, I'll go carnivore. Like, it's usually like way back there that you find somewhere or somehow. And so I'm curious, how did you get to the point of like where you were to then go, I think I'll give carnivore a try?
Well, I suffer from a neurovascular disease called erythromelalgia. So EM for short, because it's hard to say. And so there is no known cure. It's on the rare diseases list. And so your rheumatologist starts you out on a list of drugs and they just keep trialing through to see what works. That wasn't working for me. I'd lost all the bone in my teeth. I've been seeing a specialist. It affected my memory, so I was losing my memory from the drugs. I was having massive side effects, and I was still in a lot of pain, and none of it was helping. And my husband, a friend of mine had started Carnivore, and I was watching their Instagram page, and I was like, oh, all right, sounds okay. So that's when I started all the information gathering, and none of it was working, because I was trying to incorporate too many different things. And then my husband had seen Michaela Peterson, that's right, and with the Lions Diet, and got me to watch the father's YouTube clip, and I watched it, and then I was still really struggling to try and incorporate everything. And when I couldn't do it, then I'd just eat a block of chocolate to try and comfort myself. And I was just in a whole lot of pain and nothing. And he goes, Laura, I really we're both Christians. And he goes, Laura, I really think God's just give it a go. Yeah. And so that was when I tried Lions Diet. I just canned everything else and just started with that. And that's when I started to see some changes.
That's awesome. So you brought up the fact that you're a Christian. I'm also a Christian. And one of the things that I think is interesting is the conversation in the Christian world around it. And I'm curious if you've had any sort of challenges in that space.
Oh yeah, good and not so good, and it's all good really. So I suppose everyone that I've come across is like, oh wow, surely this can't be good for your health, and I'm like, well, God gave the Levites lamb and gave them ruminant meats, and He gave them the best cuts of that as well. And I said, so can't be that bad. And I said, if you look back to biblical times, all the ruminant meats were the ones that God told you to eat. Because they were the most nutrient dense. And you think about the food back then, we've really moved away from that. And a few people have told me about the Daniel diet.
Yeah.
And, and I go, yeah, I'm not denying that, Daniel survived off that. But I said that was a commitment that he had to God to not eat foods that were sacrificed to other gods. And
well,
so,
the interesting part about that thing, sorry to interject, but like I hear a number of people bringing up the Daniel diet and they'll talk about it from that perspective. And I'm like, what you're missing is that like in the nutrition world, we know that eating like a vegetarian / vegan diet, more vegan diet, right, is actually what we would call a fed fasting. It's where you're fasting from nutrient intakes basically, but you're eating. So you feel like you're full in the sense of like there's food in your tummy, so you don't have the hunger pains and you don't have those types of things going on. But nutritionally, you're not actually taking in a lot, and it's what we would call a fed fast. And a lot of religions actually have a vegan style fed fast as one of their religious practices. And so when I look at the Daniel diet and that period of time that, we're shared with what Daniel actually eats in that period of time, what I'm looking at is he's doing a fed fast. He's doing a fasting during that period of time, but it's fed. So he's not suffering the hunger pains, but he's depriving himself or holding back from the nutrient dense food. And so I think it's really interesting, like having multiple different perspectives on some of these things that's often missed in the conversation. Like I've had people talk to me about the Daniel diet too, and I'm like, that's a fed fast. We're not meant to live in fasting. Like that's not how we're meant to live.
I've really struggled with incorporating fasting because I think of where I'm at physically with my condition. Just because my body was so unwell that I could never sustain fasting properly, and that it was more of a mental thing. I think that it led to like then I would overeat and things like that. Whereas I find that my body responds well to eating when I'm hungry and not depriving myself. And mentally, with so many changes over the last 5 years, it's just easier for me to not give myself those mental challenges if I don't need to. I'm getting the health benefits without actually killing myself trying to fast. It turns out I naturally fast a little bit anyway, but that's natural.
Exactly.
I'm not forced.
Exactly. And I think about fasting from the perspective of, from a carnivore perspective, in my mind, once you are full and you're nutritionally like have got all your storehouses filled up, you naturally go into these moments of fasting where I'm like, I'm just not hungry. Like I don't actually need to eat. I'm not hungry. I'm not forcing myself. I'm not consciously going through a fasting at this point in time. I'm just not hungry. But it's coming from the overflow, coming from the abundance versus coming from a space of deprivation. And I think about it from the perspective of when somebody has got a chronic health condition, they're living in the world of depletion. So this is normal. This is where they're living. And then we say to them, fast. I'm like, but they're already depleted. They actually need to overeat to get to the place where they could potentially maybe fast, because they've got to catch up on all the nutrients that they're deficient in before you even think of trying to deprive them of more.
I just think too, for the mental struggle with dealing with your health, like at the same time, like I was so sleep deprived that, I was living off, a few hours every night. I never I didn't dream. And now I dream again because I'm actually hitting those cycles during the night. And it's like, I feel refreshed. Whereas I just never experienced that for years. And I just couldn't, I didn't dream because I never actually reached any of those sleep stages to actually dream. And to put that pressure on myself to try and hit these goals, and that's what I struggled with in the first year of Carnivore, trying to incorporate so many different things until I just scrapped everything, went to basics. I just think people need to give themselves a bit of a break sometimes. Like they just put too many, trying to reach perfection rather than consistency.
Yep. I love that. I love that, trying to reach perfection rather than consistency. Because it's consistency, it's what you do every day versus it being perfect every day that actually gets you there. So,
And as a believer, we're never perfect, right? So
exactly,
that's how I look at it.
we never actually are. And so I'm curious, like, how did your family take this? Because I look, it sounds like your husband was on board. He was encouraging you. Did he do it with you?
No. He was really encouraging because I tried so many different things, and like from medication to everything really. Like I was just trying to get back to what I used to. I couldn't grip. I'd stopped working full time. I was on medical restrictions. I was looking at being medically retired. My family, I don't think my mum and dad did, but with my brothers, I don't think they really understood the amount of pain and suffering I was in with my condition, because like
Yeah.
people just don't want to hear you whinge.
Yeah.
And so my husband was like, you whinge all the time. And I thought, I'm like, I'm controlled, like I'm holding it in. And so can you imagine if you're letting it all out? So for me, just being able to go to functions and just get out and socialize, and for me exercise, like just being physically active, being able to be physically active again, is great.
Yep.
So I think they really noticed that, and people they just constantly say, oh, you look really well, and I'm like, I feel well.
So you started out with the Lions diet. Where are you now? Are you still Lions diet, or are you a little bit more standard carnivore? Like, where are you now?
I'm pretty standard carnivore, sometimes relaxed. Like I've just been on a cruise and I was a little bit too relaxed. I so seed oils are just definitely not my friend. And so I'm still puffy. I get all the saddlebags going and puffy face. And then if I continue, I slowly start with the pain until until I have to really rein myself in. So I'm relaxed, carnivore. I can have some herbs and spices. I try and keep high oxalate herbs and spices and things like that to a minimum. So I'm not like, I'll have flavored, I think it's called bubbles or something like that for mineral water and things
yeah,
like
I've seen
that.
those. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like my treat to myself, you know. And I don't seem to have reactions to that. So I'm okay with those kinds of things. I have eggs, I have dairy, I can eat pork and chicken. I can only eat some types of pork, and I don't really get a whole lot of. I like chicken, I like thigh and chicken wings, but chicken breasts and stuff, I just don't like the taste of it. Seafood, I have to be in the mood for it. So I just take that as when I'm in the mood for it, my body's craving some sort of nutrients and I have it. But yeah, I'm pretty relaxed. I'm not 100% strict all of the time, you know, and I think that's not a bad thing. However, I still find myself heading down a few, you know, paths that aren't entirely good. And then my EM's not gone, it's at bay. And so it is a sure reminder that when my feet and hands start playing up, I go, okay, this is my little check valve, so to speak, and I'll need to rein it back in. Sometimes that's harder than others. But yeah, I'm generally pretty good.
Yep. So when you go out I'm just thinking from the perspective of your household. Your husband's not carnivore. Is he like any version, like he's meat heavy type of person, or like?
No. So he does eat well, as in, he understands, like, I try and keep seed oils out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm big on it for him as well, like, don't have seed oils.
Yeah.
But then, he'll have a packet of kettle chips, or he's a big sugar addict. So there's always chocolate or something like that in the house. I've just had to learn to live with that,
Yeah.
and not force him to live to some standards that he doesn't actually need to live by that. However, he's pretty good. Like, he will eat, like, I would say low carbish, but then every night he's a sugar addict, so he has like his sugar snacks and stuff like that. I just don't force him. The only thing that I'm like big on is trying to make choices that are more natural versus played with, engineered kind of foods.
Yeah.
So, I don't care if he has pasta and things like that. Like, I'll try and, if I can, I make those things from scratch, and or do the best we can with what we've got. I try and buy pasta sauces and things like that that don't have seed oils and are more natural, and like, I notice a big difference with that. And same with my parents. So our whole family, we run a healthy group, like, it's in Messenger, and we just post recipes. And while I don't I'm an advocate for heavy meat based and low carb diet, you choose what you want to do. And
Yep.
I usually just post some information in there about the benefits and that of different types of foods, and you make your own decisions. And I suppose that's because you would understand what it's like. Carnivore can be very well, like,
Yeah.
it's my way or the highway.
Well, that in any dietary protocol, there is what I would call the police. There are the people that are, this is the rules and this is how you do it, etc., etc., and they are the police. So, for example, I've had a couple of them jump onto my Facebook page and go, "You're not carnivore," because they've seen that I've got, like, a little bit of onion or some garlic in the food that I've actually cooked, right? And I'm like, well, I think you need to understand what the definition of carnivore is. Like, carnivore actually, like, the real definition is 70% meat and animal products. So anything from there up is carnivore. So that's hyper carnivore, that's strict carnivore, that's Lion's diet, that's standard carnivore. Like, anything that's 70%, that's a lot of the meat-based people who now call themselves meat-based because they're sick of the carnivore police. Most of them are actually still in the carnivore category. And so in any dietary protocol, I think there's always the police, and those police don't necessarily understand the whys and the hows behind things. And sometimes they don't even, like, they might have been the people that have never really had a challenge in regards to, say, sugar addiction, or they've never really had a challenge with different, like, living in a household where somebody's eating differently than you are. Like, they might not have had any of those types of challenges, and so it's been easy for them to just be strict and stay on point and so on, because that stuff's never in their house. They're never challenged with it. Like, so it's easy for them. And then when they see other people, they've got to criticize it. I kind of think about it like the dry drunks. So there are, if you work in the space of alcoholism for any length of time, you'll notice that there's two categories of people who are abstinent from alcohol. The people who are actually working through their crap and actually dealing with why they are addicted to alcohol and why that alcoholic addiction is happening. And then there are people that are just white knuckling it, and they're what we call the dry drunks. And they're horrible, nasty people to be around because their life is nasty and horrible because they're holding on tight to, like, the rules to make this happen, versus actually going, well, why am I struggling with this? What is the issue? What is the underlying reason? What maybe am I lacking in my life that I need to actually consciously fill up on, and so on. So those people are always out there. But I'm curious because one of the conversations that I have people ask me about a lot is, well, how do you do it in a household where somebody else is eating the stuff that maybe you actually like? It's not like I dislike eating, you know, hot, like vegetables, for example. It's not like I think pumpkin is poison in the sense of like, you know, if I eat it, it's going to kill me. But at the same time, if I eat it ongoingly, yeah, it actually will kill me. And so how, like, I know that I get asked that question. So I'm always curious about how other people sort of deal with that scenario as well.
I think for me, like on and off, I've as a woman, you can I've been, you know, overweight, underweight, overweight, normal weight, and so I've always been some sort of dieting over the years, and I've either made my husband go on it with me on and off over the years. But I've learnt that my issues are my issues, and I have to, with God, He helps me. It's all like I've said before, it's about consistency over perfection. And there is a problem with me, not him. And I need to work through that myself. And so I don't know. I think for me, there's a self-control problem, and me being sick has helped me manage that a little bit better because I actually physically can't. So whenever I go off, I actually, it's not straight away, but it's a slow progression.
Yeah.
And when that pain starts to come beyond what I can handle, it is my check valve. Like I can't go, like I stop and go, wow, you've really headed down this road. And so I think that helps me stay in line more than anything else. If I didn't have this illness, I'd probably be eating chocolate and chips and all sorts of stuff, like because there is no check valve.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer, because perfection feels like you're in jail. Like you talked about this white knuckling, and like you cannot move from these rules, and like people get so fixated on you cannot have a pinch of pepper, you cannot have stevia or monk fruit or any of those things because that's not on the list. And I'm like, well, your list is your list. And if you feel like you need to, that's how you need to live your life, that's fine. But you're not living other people's lives. I think you need to provide people with the correct information and allow them to find out what works for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just how I see it. I'd love eventually to be able to incorporate other things in my diet down the track and in the future. And I leave that up to God and see how that progresses down the track. I've been able to add in more things in the last year than I was previously. I used to be allergic to dairy.
Yay!
And I can have dairy, not a problem. I can't actually have all types of dairy. So things that are altered and manufactured, I can have it now and then, but then I start to have reactions to it. But unaltered dairy, like if it's not being processed too much, I'm fine with that. Whereas I used to break out in hives, I've been like tested, like, yeah, no, if I can have dairy, I'm like, and which is great because I love cheese.
I think dairy just makes like, because we're doing myself and my kids are doing beef, bacon, butter, and eggs this week.
Yeah.
And so it's when you do a week of beef, bacon, butter, and eggs that you realize, this mince would be nice with a bit of cheese on top. And or a little bit of sour cream would make this mint.
So I'm not doing dairy this week either. So I'm doing, because I've just been on a cruise, and I think every night for dessert, because I didn't have they'd give me a cheese plate. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to ace it up a bit because
I need to have a little break.
Yeah.
I love that. One of the things that I like about you sharing your story here is that this point that I'll often make with a lot of clients, and that is that with the Lions diet, most people, and I would say probably around 90% of the people that do the Lions diet do it for some type of health reason. And they don't necessarily do it with the intention of that's where they're going to live their life forever and ever and ever. Amen. Like even Michaela Peterson, you know, she wants to bring back some foods, and that's always been her goal. And she's starting to be able to bring in a couple of things very slowly. But I think in the world of the carnivore police people, they go, no, that's how we live forever and ever, amen. I'm like, no, majority of the people who start that don't start that because that's where they want to live. It's because their physical body won't let them live and thrive anywhere else. And
100%.
their hope is that at some point they can slide down that spectrum. And I think about carnivore as a spectrum. So I'm like, hypercarnivore is here, and then you've got the Lions diet here. And, you know, we sometimes have to move up and down that spectrum depending on what's happening in our life. Like if we're going through a really stressful period, I think going closer to the Lions diet is going to be helpful during that stressful period. But like if life is good, we're happy, everything's going great, we can probably have a little bit more capacity for some of these other things, like you know, maybe some seasonal fruits or berries, for example, for some people, or you know, some herbs and spices, etc. But it all depends on
chicken and pork. So
yeah, chicken and pork.
I at certain times can really struggle with having reactions to that. Mm-hmm. So adding those in, I'll go, great, I'll have chicken wings for like 2 weeks straight because I can eat them, and I'm like, I've smashed them down. I have, you know, Frank's hot sauce with it and some sour cream, and I'm like, this is the best. Like I feel like I'm really lashing out. And then other times where I've been stressed, I haven't slept, I've been a little off plan, so then I can't actually eat it. So I have reactions to chicken, like, or especially pork. Bacon, not so much. Pork, I can feel like I've been drugged, and I can't keep my eyes open. Like I'm literally, and it's such a distinctive reaction, but I'm not like that all the time. And like you said, different periods of time, you can have different reactions, and you just got to roll with it. And I suppose that's listening to your body. That's taken a real long time to know and trust. Okay, I feel like this, and I go, I'll have it, and I feel amazing. And forcing myself to eat stuff that I don't really feel like, and then I'm like, I don't. And so that's taken a long time to understand, because I just haven't had a great understanding of listening to my body, because you've just fed it rubbish and you just don't know what those signals are or anything like that. So, and it took, I reckon, maybe a good year and a half to start understanding what they are, like those signals, and going, oh man, I feel like this, and I'll have it, and I'm like, I feel amazing. Like I could go run a marathon, and then when I'm sitting down, someone else has fed me something and I don't really feel like eating it, I don't feel great.
Yep.
Which is amazing. Like, because my body's just telling me, you just actually didn't need to eat that right now.
And I love that, like, you're talking about this, because, like, you know, 4 years into this journey for you.
And I still struggle, mind you.
Of course.
It's just natural, because you're in these earthen vessels, so to speak, and we're just flesh, and we're just, I don't know, we're just pretty messed up.
But I think too, like when you're doing something different to everybody else around you, that can add another layer of complexity, because there's that whole, like, and I hear it with clients as well. So they'll go through a period of time going, why do I have to be so different? Like, this person over here can eat whatever they like and they never have a problem. And I'm like, unfortunately, you're not them. If you were them, maybe that would be great for you too, but you're not them. You can only deal with what you've actually been given in this moment in time to actually deal with. But also looking at, what have you gained from removing those other foods? Like, does having the chips and the chocolate mean more to you than having the ability to walk down the street without any pain? And, you know, I often think of, like, life as an adult is a big game of what would you rather? You can eat the chips and chocolate but live with pain, or you can choose to not eat the chips and chocolate but maybe run.
Yes. I
Sometimes the chips and chocolate win out, by the way.
Of course. So when I was turning 40, I was so ill at the time. I wasn't working full time. We'd had planned a trip to Canada for my 40th.
Yep.
And we had to cancel it. I just couldn't get on a plane. I just couldn't physically do it. And I was pretty like, that whole period of time, I don't really remember like lots of it because I was on a whole range of different kinds of drugs that mess with your mind. And I was so sleep deprived. I turned 45 this year. And I said, I feel so much better now than I did when I was 40. Like, it's just, and I think I look younger. Probably got a few wrinkles, but it's just such a difference. It's like night and day. And just to be able to, I couldn't even put shoes on. So I wear shoes now. I remember I bought all these shoes and they were just in boxes and they're brand new. I still got them, but they're so out of fashion now. It's like they're old. But I can wear shoes now. I used to love playing netball. I couldn't play for years because I couldn't wear shoes. I think for about 4 years, I just wore thongs in winter. Like I couldn't put shoes on. I had chilblains. I had open wounds on my feet. And now I can wear shoes. So I buy boots and I'm like, oh, these look nice. It's just such a change. And so to go back to these are the things when you think you forget.
Yep.
And then you realize and take for granted what's changed. So that is, for me, good reminders to think on those things to go, this is what motivates me to keep going. And I'm able to go and socialize with those people out. And because of how my life has changed, that I can actually go do those things because I'd be invited to birthday parties. So a friend's 40th that I said, yeah, I'm coming to, and then couldn't go. And they were really upset that I couldn't make it. And I was like, but I'm so ill. I can't do it. And people can tend to not understand because they go, yeah, I'm in pain too. I don't sleep too. Well, it's completely different.
Exactly.
But my life, I think of those things because it's a good reminder of why I can go and do those things now. I can go and socialise. I can go to parties. And look, good friends are really understanding. And they trying to accommodate, and they go, oh, look, I've made all these meats. And, before I was really strict, I'd bring my own food and go, I can only eat this because I just don't know how you've prepared it.
Exactly.
And now I'm like, sure, I just, Lord bless this food to my body and just, and eat and enjoy. And, I'm not feeling 100% later on. Well, then I just make sure I have some water and just get straight back onto being consistent rather than perfection. So, and think of those things as good reminders of why I'm doing the things that I'm doing.
I think too, one of the things that you've probably created now is a bit of buffer space, which is that, way back at the very beginning, you probably didn't have any of the capacity for that buffer space. And so if you had have eaten what maybe some friends have done and they've put some oil on the grill and they've cooked it in whatever, probably would have knocked you out for a bit. Whereas now there's a little bit of buffer space where you can do that and know, okay, I've just got to be clean on the other side of this so that I can recreate that buffer space for the next time and bring that in.
I think that's what done me come me unstuck to begin with when I was going down all different rabbit holes. I hadn't healed anything, but yet was trying to incorporate so many different things. And it wasn't until I'd got some level of healing that I was able to create that buffer space, so to speak. So, yeah.
Yep. So I'm curious, like, where are you at from the medical perspective now? Like, are you still taking a lot of medication? Are you on any? What have your
I
doctors
know.
said?
Well, my doctor refuses to see me anymore. So my rheumatologist, this is before I even really started the line stuff. Like I'd started carnivore-ish. So my rheumatologist, and I just went in. I was actually, I can't think of what it's called when you've got it's like gum disease. But
Gingivitis?
all my, no, it's like gum disease.
Worse,
yeah.
Periodontal.
Yeah. So, but the drugs that I was taking at the time had caused this brown line. All my bone has receded, and I've been going to see a periodontal, some sort of specialist. I no longer see them anymore either, because everything's fine now. I just have to maintain stuff, and it's just interesting. But I was going to lose all my teeth and get dentures, and I was like, I used to have such beautiful teeth. Now I've got all gaps and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh well, there's nothing you can do about it as long as I've still got teeth, mate. That's fine. But I went to the rheumatologist and said, I'm not taking any more drugs. That's it. Like, because I was just like a guinea pig of, well, this one doesn't work, so we'll try this one. This is stronger, blah, blah, blah. And I just went one day and said, that's it. I said, I'm not trying anymore. And he goes, well, I can't do anything for you. And that was it. That was the last he'd see me. And during COVID, my general GP was reluctant to agree to anything because they were in such a, I suppose, a hard rock and hard place with what advice they can give and what can't give and all these things. And I just didn't go back. I had one last blood test and I just was like, that's it. I've had enough of everyone. I had chucked a dummy spit and I was like, that's it. And I haven't been back. I just started the Lions diet and I actually went through withdrawals from the drugs because I just went cold turkey. And realistically shouldn't have done that. It was quite unpleasant and bad. But thankfully my memory was just shot. So there's a lot of it is like just complete fog. And yeah, I don't see anyone. People, family and friends worry, oh, you should go get your cholesterol checked. And I just kind of think I could go get my cholesterol checked, but I really just don't care. Like I feel good, and that's what I base things off. My whole family, people have had heart attacks, and hopefully they might be listening to this. Extremely overweight and unhealthy, and on cholesterol medication, and yet they're telling me I need to go get checked, and I'm feeling amazing. And I tell them that though, so forgive me. But yeah, no, I'm just continuing on. And if I feel sick or something like that where I need to go to the doctors, I'm not against doctors. I will go, but I actually feel good, so I don't need to go.
I think it's interesting because I've got a number of clients who have had a heart attack, and so they come to me and I go, well, I know the fastest way to get you better is to make a carnivore, and to get everything under control from that perspective. And they maybe haven't been back, so they'll go get their bloods done at their doctor, and then they'll go again 3 or 6 months later to get those retested. And the interesting thing is that the doctor just assumes that they've been on this low fat diet, which is hilarious because they'll go, whoa, because they usually walk back in and they've lost 20, 30 kilos, maybe even more. They're looking really great. They've passed all of these fitness tests that they never were able to pass before. you know, like they might have done a stress test and they could walk at a particular speed. Well, now they can run, and you know, they're blowing these markers out of the water, and the doctor goes, keep doing your low fat diet, and they are like wetting themselves laughing because the doctor hasn't bothered to ask them what type of diet they're actually having, so they just didn't give up information that wasn't asked of them.
Of course. Who needs to be lectured?
Exactly. But it's hilarious to see like the doctors encourage them in their low fat diet when basically they're eating just fat and meat.
One of the things I didn't mention was, so one of my kidneys was, the kidney function was nearly below 60.
Yeah.
And they'd sent me off to a kidney specialist because they thought I had MS and all these sorts of things. So I had to go see a kidney specialist and so my sister's, the kidney, it was full of cyst.
Yeah.
And he goes, like, you can't have ibuprofen ever again for the rest of your life. You need to stop having all these things. I'd stopped having soft drink. I like to have bubbles. That's my thing. And so mineral water, I've got to have a bit. And I think it was October-ish that I'd started, and I'd gone back in November, and he goes, oh, I'd started Carnivore, and he goes, you don't no longer need to come and see me. Like that, in that short amount of time, my kidney function had improved that much, was back up into the normal range. Nothing, I still haven't gone and got tested to see if there's cysts or anything there or whatever, but they'd all gone back like a huge jump. Like it had gone from below right up back into normal. And like, so I had, well, there was more than 20 cysts.
Yeah.
So whether they've just
probably were looking at diagnosing you like with polycystic kidney cysts. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And yeah, so what
but
can you say?
The interesting thing you're saying about that though is I've had patients as well where they've been maybe stage 3 kidney disease where, you know, they're really just a step away or a dash away from being put on dialysis on a regular basis. And they've started Carnivore, and within like 12 weeks they've gone back and had that test and they've moved down. So maybe now they're stage 1, stage 2. And you know, it's actually being very quick for some people in how quick that's resolved, which is interesting because, you know, if you like when I post on my Facebook, because, you know, I've got a lot of health practitioners that are on my Facebook page, a lot of them will go, have you researched the dangers to your kidneys with like long-term protein, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, the dangers of like getting healthy.
But when you no longer have to see a kidney specialist.
Exactly. But that's the education that a majority of health professionals are actually getting, which is that protein is bad for the kidneys and that it's going to degrade and erode the kidneys. And I'm like, but you're putting the cart before the horse. Like, you're thinking that because when we see kidney damage, we find protein in the urine. But you're not asking, is that protein causing that kidney to be damaged, or is that just a byproduct of what we're seeing because of something else that's actually happening there? And it's interesting to see more and more people being able to come out and share that they have gone to a meat-based diet and their kidneys have actually gotten better. So for me, it's encouraging that you shared that, because I can go, just go check out what Laura said happened to her. And, you know, Sally and somebody else. And at this point in time, most of it is anecdotal, but that's all we've got until somebody does research, until somebody puts some dollars into it. That's all we've got. And the likelihood is it's actually just going to be people who are sick of being sick that actually put the dollars into it, because pharmaceutical companies make no money off of this.
I was going to say that. That's why
like the only people that stand to make some money would be some farmers and some butchers maybe, but they're not making that much money.
That's right. Yeah. True.
The supermarkets probably could put some money in there if they wanted to sell some more meat, but you know, the green movement tells them not to do that.
Oh, they're putting sugar in some of the ones at Coles and Woolies.
Exactly.
I don't know why. tastes good without it.
Well, I think so too, but maybe, I don't know, maybe, I don't, we won't go there because there's a lot of stuff that's happening at Woolies and so on that's not so great. So I'm curious for you, because one of the things that I talk about with some of my coaching clients in this space is, for me, I think of carnivore as a lifelong type of thing. I don't envisage that I'm going to, in 20 years' time, not be carnivore. Even from that perspective of carnivore is 70% animal products and up. I don't envisage that I won't be carnivore. And so for me, I'm like, I've got this grace time of relearning how to do things. And what I mean by that is, like, what does a birthday look like when you're carnivore? And what does Christmas look like? And what does like Easter look like? And what does other celebrations look like? And how do you want them to look, et cetera, and giving yourself the grace to grow through them versus it has to be perfect from day one. You can't deviate in any way, shape, or form. So I'm curious how, you're 4 years in, how have you kind of started to tackle that process of changing over what those celebrations look like for you?
I think for me, for Easter, so to speak, I am not one who believes that you don't eat meat on Good Friday. Jesus ate lamb, and I've always thought that even before carnivore. So, and the church that we moved in the process, but the church that I used to belong to, we'd have a Good Friday lunch, and there'd be meat and all sorts of stuff like that. So, thankfully, I've always loved meat. Which is really good. I feel sorry for those people who don't. So yeah, I think it's an Aussie, I've been brought up with, lamb 4-quarter chops and veggies, and you had to eat them every night. So for me, I think it's just, I haven't really struggled that much with like gatherings like that, because that there is always the meat option, and I make sure that I'm prepared. So usually on Sundays afternoons, I do some meal prepping, and I always find that prepping is a good way to make better choices. I'm not always perfect. So for instance, at Christmas time that's just gone, I make a turkey and we have lamb, and for a side I make a egg salad, and I bring some pork rinds, and I bring those things because I'm going to eat them, not because I'm providing it for everyone else. They can eat whatever they like, but as long as I know that there's choices for me to make some good choices. I think that makes it easier for me. I suppose not everyone's in a position sometimes to financially to do those things. We're okay. So I just, go, well, I'd rather spend money on this than on, $40 a week on medication. Or $50 a week on medication. So I just try and prepare myself. I'm not always perfect, but I just try and make sure that, Christmas and Easter's and birthdays, majority of it is your 70%. Like, I'm probably more closer to 90, but each to their own. That's like, going forward, I would see myself completely still largely meat orientated. I'd love to be able to add some more fruits in, and I always think back to the Bible. I go, they had lamb, they had figs, they had dates, they had butter, they had cream, they had like all those kinds of dried fruits and different things like that. I'd eventually like to be able to add those in. For me, the sugar path of those things can be a slippery slope, and I don't think mentally I've learnt enough to control. I don't have enough self-control. Maybe 20 years down the track, I still see myself at the having more lamb and things. I don't see any of that changing. But just maybe some of the sides might be different.
I think that's interesting because, like, one of the things that I'll say to people is they'll say to me, like, but what about avocado? Isn't that good? And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, you need to understand that avocado would be a gateway drug for me. That it wouldn't take long for the avocado to turn into a donut. And so, is the avocado worth it for me? Not at this point. Maybe at some point when I have control over that and the avocado just stays an avocado and doesn't turn into this slippery slope of like everything else. I could like the little part of it is, and this is what I see the pattern for most people is they go, oh, I'll have the avocado, right? And I got away with it. There was no symptoms. I had no problems, no issues. So I'll have a little bit of something else and they get away with that. And then they'll have a little bit of something else. And then that little bit of something else suddenly turns into not a little bit anymore, but a whole lot of something else. And then they get whammied with their symptoms. And, you know, it's a roller coaster ride and you've got to backtrack. And backtracking, I think, sometimes is harder than just staying in place
Yeah.
in doing what you're actually doing. But for me, for Christmas this year, I went and did a lot of keto/carnivore desserts. So, you know, we had like 5 different meats. So it's like lamb and goose and duck and like ham and everything. Well, my son was desperate because he's like, well, he wants to eat all the different things. So we went and caught a goose and we killed it and we ate it. And so he learned to do that. And so, you know, we had a whole smorgasbord of meats. And my philosophy is we cook a lot for this one day, but then we don't cook for the rest of the week because we get to eat cold meats and so on for the rest of the week. Yeah. And egg salad is definitely one of those things. But I also did carnivore mashed potatoes, which is basically egg whites and gelatin and some cream cheese and cheeses all mixed together. They kind of look like Deb potatoes. So, you know, we had that with some gravy that we made just like from the drippings of the meat that we'd actually cooked. But dessert-wise, I made what was a pavlova, but it was made with an alternative sweetener and basically eggs. Like that was basically it, and cream on top. And so, you know, the kids had like berries on their side, and I just had mine with cream on top. And then we made a creme brulee, which is basically it. So we took all the egg yolks from the pavlova and turned those into a custard, and then did an alternative sugar on the top, and you know, made it a creme brulee. So like,
yum.
We have learned to start to adapt to be able to still have desserts and things like that, but they look differently. They look slightly different. They, you know, they're still actually pretty good. Like we also made a cheesecake with a little bit of lemon juice, etc. And so for me, my goal is to get to the point where people like envy us. They go, oh, not in a bad sense, but in the sense of like, oh, actually, I could do that. That seems like something I could do. I could have the creme brulee as a dessert. I could have the cheesecake as a dessert. And it would still feel like living for them versus being completely
100%.
deprived.
Yeah, I do those things too. Don't get me wrong. I'll go through spats of it though. Like, so
Yeah.
I'll go like a month where I'm, you know, making like little chaffles, like I can make some sweet ones and different things. And then I will go straight back to I'm not doing any of that because I can't be bothered. Yeah, so I was making egg white wraps.
Yep.
And having those to have wraps and stuff while I was doing all that with gelatin and this, that, and then I go, oh, I can't be bothered. And then I'll be like, I'll crumbing using pork to crumb. And then I go, oh, I can't be bothered. Then I'm making bread and then I can't be bothered. Like, so I do, yeah. I think it's every 2 months I start a little fad.
I love that. Because I go through the like, oh, I can't be bothered for that. My son loves to cook, so he's the person that will stand in the kitchen and bash the chicken breast and then roll like, you know, camembert cheese and stuff in it and then crumb it. And so I'm like, you do that, honey. Go you. I will 100% support you doing that. I cannot be bothered. I
need one of those.
Well, he doesn't want to do it every day either, though. Oh my gosh, I miss having an air fryer.
Oh, because you're on the road, is that right?
Well, we were on the road, but where we're living at the moment, we're on 100% solar power. So we just don't have enough power to power up the air fryer, while we were traveling, we took the air fryer with us everywhere because we could plug that into like public barbecues and air fry.
Okay. We just got myself for my birthday. We got like a fire pit that has hibachi grill on top. We've only used it once because the weather's turned and it's been raining every time we go to use it. But that's been great. But my air fryer, I have to say, probably need a new one. It's got a bit of a workout. Like everything is 20 minutes on,
I know.
20 minutes. And then I don't put it on. I don't cook it for 20 minutes. I just actually set the same time and sort of go past, it's 12 minutes. Yeah, that T-bone looks done. That's it. Well, it is convenient.
I know how to cook a perfect steak in the air fryer. Like exactly how I like it. I know it needs this many minutes on this side and then this many minutes on this side, and we're done, and it's perfection. A little bit harder in a frying pan sometimes.
Oh, then you go out to buy a steak and you're like, I could cook it better than this and it's cheaper. I'm such a steak snob.
Yeah, we've done that. We went to, where was it? I think we got a takeaway steak from like Hog's Breath Cafe, and it was like $80 for me and my husband to get it, like this like smallish steak each, and we didn't get any of the sides. We just got the steak, and then we got it and it was overcooked, and I'm like, oh gosh, if I had $80, I could have bought Wagyu beef and I could have made it like delicious. Like, so just go, sometimes it's really not worth it.
Well, I suppose that's why I envy the US sometimes with the places that they have where you can go get, wings that are cooked in tallow and lard versus seed oils. They have a lot more options. We are getting some. I know that you're a part of some of the online groups that I'm joined to as well, and I always think that they're great places where you can share, where you can get, like, someone goes, I can't get egg white powder, and you're like, well, you can get it from here and it's kind of cheap. And I think the more we do that, the more popular these items become, and we're able to create more options for people. I remember many years ago when I first found out I couldn't have dairy, and I drank a lot of soy milk, which it's better to just not have any. However, back then there was no options for dairy free at all, and now there's just so many options. And so I'm hoping as people learn the benefits of a high meat diet and high protein, low carb diet, that more of these options will become available in restaurants and things like that. When I say, can you please not cook that in seed oil, they have no idea what I'm talking about. And then I'm like, all right, here we go, I've got to educate. But I'm hoping that as more of us join, like there's over 20,000 in one group that we're members of, and I'm hoping that the more people who get on board and we start educating some of these local places, like our restaurants and stuff like that, we'll make it easier. They go, oh, canola oil is, great. You know what a seed oil is.
Yeah. I think part of that education also comes down to the consumer understanding the cost variation of that, though. Like when it comes to using canola oil, it's something like 20 cents to actually use that versus something like butter, which is going to be like $2. And so the part of our journey as well is to understand that it's going to cost us more to start with, and then eventually those prices tend to come back down as as it becomes more of a market, and restaurants buy in larger amounts, the price then goes down for everyone. But it is a transitional period for that to actually happen as well. But I agree with you. I hope the more people get to know it, the more they educate their restaurants, and the more we actually start to see these as options.
I heard, and I don't know if this is true, I heard that we export a lot of our beef tallow and then we pay to get it back in. And I was like, what? Like, how is that possible? Like, I make my own. And I just go, like, why are we selling it overseas and paying for it to come back in when that is a good alternative? When lots of butchers are paying to get that scrap taken away, we could be using that for oils for frying your chips and whatnot. Like, it's just such a better alternative for people.
And once upon a time, your local fish shop did cook in tallow. That was the norm until all of the education around, um, fat is bad for us, and so here's our alternative: is these petrochemical oils, etc. Until that came through, your local fish and chip shop cooked in tallow. Like that's actually what they cooked in. It's like I think about even places like KFC, for example. It used to be healthier because they used to actually cook in real oils versus what they actually cook in now, which is that canola oil. Like, even these things that are not necessarily perfect were much better before this mass education of like fat is bad.
So my mum, during COVID, had a number of reactions to some certain things, and has to, I think it was every month, go relieve that. So go get a needle straight into the eyeball to relieve pressure. And no known cure again, but there has been a common reaction to the thing that must not be named, and then and so was going to get these, and they went on a low carb, no seed oil. So not carnivore, low carb, no seed, basically about 10 grams of carbs, so they'll still have some veg and stuff like that. No longer has to get needles in their eye. They still go back and get checked, and when they've been unwell, the pressure builds, and no longer has to go get needles. I just think that's amazing.
Well, I think it's so interesting. I'm just like, out of all the things in the body that could happen, needles in my eyeballs, no, I'm going blind. Just leave me alone.
It's such a Friends episode. I don't know whether you've ever watched Friends, but Rachel does not want drops in the eye.
I don't know that I've watched Friends, but I don't know that I recall that bit of Rachel not wanting drops in her eye.
Yeah. It's like if you've ever been to Specsavers and they put your head on the thing and they blow that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole scene. Yeah.
Yep.
So I couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it. It would be a severe thing. Like I had to have a tooth out recently, and
I saw that.
The tooth was broken, but it wasn't causing me any problems. I had no problems with it on Carnivore whatsoever until I got a stomach flu. I got a stomach flu, and that kind of maybe knocked my nutrients down a little bit. And then I got the toothache, and it got infected and so on. And like for me, it was a real crunch. It was like, is this pain enough for me to go to the dentist to get a needle and have this yanked out? I'll yank it out myself if I could. But the pain was, I reached the threshold of like, okay, I'm going to go to the dentist, which tells you it was very severe.
I think some people are under the misconception too that because you're carnivore, that you never get sick. That's just not true, and an unreasonable expectation that people place on themselves. Like, oh, I mustn't be doing everything correctly because I've got sick, or I've got a cold, or I've got this. Your body naturally comes across different things out in the world, and we react differently. We have sleep, we have different stresses, our body reacts differently, and it's our way for our bodies to heal and to look after itself, and we have a response to that. And I just think to myself, like, just because I'm carnivore, does that mean I'm never going to get a cold or an earache or a toothache or any? That's not true. Like, it's not a miracle drug.
Yeah. But also too, the part I want to add to that is that we all had lives before we became carnivore. Like that tooth, and I've got another one that's still broken. They were both broken well before I even became carnivore. Like this one back here's been broken for like 5 years. Like that was well before I became carnivore that it was broken. And so we all have different things before we actually became carnivore. So I'm never going to get that tooth, unless God miraculously gives me another tooth. It's never going to actually regrow and heal. but my cavities have actually replenished themselves. Like gingivitis that I've had, or plaques that I've had around my teeth, they've actually repaired themselves. But I can't bring back something that's dead. I mean, unless God does a miracle for me, something that's dead in my body is not going to come back to life because I'm eating in a healthy diet now. Like that's just not going to happen. But the other element there is that when somebody comes to me and they say, I'm never sick, that's just as concerning to me as somebody who is always sick. Simply because if they're never sick, that tells me that their body's not giving them the responses that they've been attacked. Like they're still getting attacked because the invaders are out there. They're still happening. But if your body's not able to muscle up a response by giving you a runny nose, that tells me there's something seriously going wrong there, because we actually do want to get these challenges. Otherwise, we don't get a robust, strong immune system that actually protects us against worse things. And so I think we have some really funky thinking about this inside and outside of the church as well.
Oh, just in general, yeah. I think we have some funky thinking about a whole lot of nutritional do's and don'ts that, you know, that we've all been taught.
Yeah.
That not necessarily have been taken into account with, hamburgers and chips, terrible for you. However, I don't think everything solely in the hamburger and chips is wrong. It's the how, really.
Yeah. And I agree with you there, because like I have some guys that work with me and they're truck drivers. And so we just have to figure out on the road what they can actually get. And for some of them, the easiest thing they can do is go to McDonald's. Okay, great. What can you get at McDonald's that is going to be as optimal, not perfect, but as optimal as possible? Get the quarter pounder burgers. Get some cheese.
I love that. Is my go-to takeaway.
Yep.
I still get the cheese there, and I'm like 4 quarter pounder patties with cheese, and I get an iced coffee without sugar syrup, so I'm having the milk. And I tell you what, that is my like little indulgence. And when I'm being naughty, I'll like get it every day.
I love it.
That is my indulgence for sure. I never get sick of it.
So I've got 2 more questions for you. One of which is along the lines of, people will often say to me, it's so restrictive. And I'm like, your thought process about restrictive is what's on my plate is restricted. My thought process about restrictive is my life is restricted because I can't do things. I can't walk up the hill. I can't, be a part of my life. What do you have, like, what comments do you have to that type of stuff?
I agree exactly what you're saying. The restrictive part is not being able to live a full life. So if I'm thinking about what food's on my plate, yeah, sure, it's just meat burgers or it's just a steak. However, half the time you're constantly thinking about the satisfying of your feelings, so to speak, rather than actually it's food for fuel. And to get away from this mindset of, if I eat this, this will make me happy. I'm unhappy because I'm unhappy because I'm so restricted with what I can eat. We need to eat so our bodies work, so that we can enjoy life. And having that mentality of if I eat this meat pie, this is going to be the best thing ever, and my life is so enriched by having it. We just think about things in the opposite way, and it's not easy because we've spent a lifetime of doing that.
Sure.
And so it's just thinking about the positives rather than the negatives, and that's why I will say again, it's about consistency, not perfection, because the reality is whenever you're trying to put yourself in that box where you can't move out of, you're going to think it's really restrictive, and you're going to say, oh man, lamb again. Like, I'll get out some lamb chops or steak later and I'll eat it because I'm starving. And I'll be like, yeah, it's great. But if I'm not, then I'm gonna, like, if I'm forcing myself to have that, like, I wish I could have this instead or whatever. I'm like, I don't know. It's just getting yourself in that mindset of, I'm going to go for a walk. I've walked the dogs this morning. I'm going to go for another walk again later because I'm off work at the moment and still on holidays. I'll go back to work next week. I've got the opportunity to go for a walk and I can do it and the sun's out. Great. I wouldn't have been able to do that before. And so you think of those things and think of, great, I'm going to go enjoy the sun or what little there is of it.
One of the things that I talk about a lot is that if you're looking for variety on your plate to be the thing that gives you enjoyment in life, then maybe there's something wrong with your life. And maybe it's time to actually start to look at creating more variety and adventure and exploration and doing new things, like join a pottery class, something that maybe you've always wanted to do, but you've never actually done. Maybe look at, like, you know, connecting with people, joining a sports group, like actually connecting and creating a life that you love to live versus the only love you get is on your plate.
Different patterns, yeah.
And actually get out there and live it. Like, life is so short, it can be over in a second. And are you happy with how you're living it right now by vicariously being happy through what's on your plate? Like, I kind of have walked that pathway, you know, having had a near-death experience, to go, yeah, actually, I think I want more life in my life, not more variety on my plate.
Mm-hmm.
So the last question that I have for you is, if somebody's listening to this and they're watching this and they're like, I think I want to give it a go, what would be your top tips for somebody who's just starting to think about carnivore as a thing that they could do?
Top tips would be to, okay, if you slip up and you make a mistake, it's not, I'll wait till Monday and I'll start again. It's just, you get back on the next meal and you try and make good choices again. Give yourself a variety of foods, like different meats, as in have some options there. So some boiled eggs, some fried up diced bits of meat, just for the beginning, for snacks, because you'll find that at the beginning you're constantly hungry because you just don't know what your hunger signals are. And I'm always of the opinion to just go with it at the beginning. If you're hungry, you're hungry. If you're not hungry and you've got an aversion to meat, because that can happen as well, don't eat. And just base it on what you feel like. If you feel like having some bacon, eat some bacon. And probably some other meal preps would be key. To take the time. You don't think it's important, but I think meal prepping is, especially for those who have other people in the household who don't eat on the same plan as yourself. So it just helps you make better choices, because when it's there, you'll eat it and you just don't want to waste food. So you'll just go, I don't want to chuck this out. And so and maybe the other thing is, to, right at the beginning, is to maybe try, if you feel like you're missing like a wrap or something like that, well, learn how to make some wraps. Splurge a little, get the things that you need to make those things, and do that if that's what you feel like you need. I think people are really big on trying to work out every symptom really straight on, like, oh, you need electrolytes and you need more fat, you need this and you need that. It takes a long time for your body to adjust. You've just spent 20, 30, 40 plus years eating just whatever. Your body's not going to change overnight. And to not worry too much about every little niggle and or pain or anything like that. Just try not to overthink stuff. Just plod along, see how you go. It takes weeks for these things. Like for me, it took nearly 3 months to see even minimal changes. So just keep going. And if you make a mistake, you just next meal, get straight back on it. And my encouragement would be, you don't need to let the world know what you're doing either, because you're already battling with your own mind. You don't need to be battling with other people's minds and thoughts either. So when you feel like you're ready to share what you're doing, then share it, but just keep out there. Try not to go down every single rabbit hole. Just stick with what you're trying, stick with the path, and then reach out if you feel like you need to.
Yeah. I will often say to people, like, you've got to give it a good 90 days before you really start to play and adjust too much with everything. You've got to give it a good 90 days for your body just to, like, it's got to do a lot of detoxification. It's got to do a lot of cleansing. It's got so many jobs that you're now giving it resources to do. It's busy. It doesn't need.
You start playing with stuff, fat ratios and salts and different things, all within the first 2 weeks. People start playing around with all those kinds of things, and I just go, like, it's just far too early to start messing with the ins and outs of all those things. Just try and get used to eating meat.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
And it's just, you get really complicated, and that's when you can tend to make it too hard for yourself, versus just, like, I think 90 days is a good starting point as well. Yeah. Once you get to the one, you get to the other.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll eventually get to where you need to go. It's just, you've got to remember, like you said, you've been eating in a different way for like 20, 30, 40. Some of the people I've interviewed on here, 70 years before they've actually made the change to go into carnivore. And so that's a lot of history, mentally, that you've got to unpack and reprogram. It's a lot of toxins that you've been exposed to. It's like a whole bunch of stuff that you're expecting your body to fix straight away. And it's funny because, I don't know, you've probably seen these posts too, where people will jump on and they're like, I'm 2 weeks into carnivore, and like last week I lost like 5 kilos, and this week I haven't lost any. What am I doing wrong? I'm like, what? You've lost 5 kilos? That's a lot of weight. Like, give your body some time to like rebalance.
Yeah, or just some of the, I've been carnivore for 10 days, and I'm experiencing this. I'm like, it's okay. You don't need to super overanalyze so much. I just think that you tend to set yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
And a real struggle, and then you take it, and then you'll have like 150 comments on what you should do. And I'm like, what you should do is not listen to half of those comments. And just relax.
Yep.
Go for a nice walk outside. Go to bed at 10 o'clock.
Read a book. Think about something different.
Yeah. I just was like, but we all did it, I think, too. And I think in hindsight, looking back, that's why I struggled for the first year, just listening to everyone's comments and trying to incorporate it all. So, yeah.
I always think it's funny because I will read through the comments sometimes and I'm like, dude, like, you haven't even asked half the questions. Like, she hasn't given you enough information to make an accurate assessment of what. Did she drink enough water today? Right. Nobody's asked her, did she drink water today? She sounds dehydrated.
I just tried to, like, really not engage too much with those things. I'll just give like a few, this is what's worked for me, not saying that that's necessarily going to work for you. I always preference with, this is what's worked for me, this is what I've done, this is what I've tried, this is what I did, this is what's worked for me.
It's a fickle game. Asking strangers on the internet how to fix yourself. Sometimes you'll get really great answers, but actually quite a lot of the time you're going to get I love how you said get rid of most of those answers, because they're mostly like not going to be helpful. And it's interesting, but I agree. Jumping into those Facebook groups can be super helpful to feel like you're not alone, especially if you're like, well, how do I answer this question when somebody's asked you a question? and you might not have known it yet. You might not have thought in that process yet.
Products, recipes, you know, where to go listen to this, read this book, things like that. I think they're super helpful when you start getting down to the nitty gritty of why this is happening to you or to me. That's when I think we tend to can get a little, you know, we're all experts. And I go, okay, even I've done it too. So I've learned over the time to just go, okay, here's some options.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep. And I agree, especially if you're not like really sharing with people, having a space where you can just like vent a little bit as well can be helpful. Ask for like, where do I get the electrolytes? What are you guys talking about? Which ones are good, etc., etc. Yeah.
Yeah. And a few good jokes here and there are always good as well.
Those are always great too. I do love when people post things like documentaries or other people's stories. Like I really love to listen to other people's stories.
Transformations, what's been healed. There's some really good ones out there, aren't there?
Yeah. And I think like in those times, especially in the first period of it where maybe you're not quite getting the results that you want to be getting, or you know, it's really like, even for me, like I'm, you know, trained as a nutritionist and a naturopath and so on. And so I've spent years learning about fruits and vegetables and how good they are, and like what we should, like, you know, so mentally there was a big shift there. Like I knew that they weren't the be all and end all because of the work that I'd already done with clients, but there was still in the back of my mind, and being able to like connect with other people's stories and go, okay, but I'm putting aside all of the knowledge that I've been taught thus far, and this person has healed this, and this person is getting better at this, and this person has lost this amount of weight, and this person, like, and just going, I'm just going to walk it for 90 days, and I'm not committing to marrying carnivore at this point in time, but I'm just going to date it for 90 days and see what I think, and then figure out all the buts.
Yeah, for sure. That's good.
All right, with that said, are you happy if people reach out and want to message you and say, hey, I've got this condition too, or something a lot similar, or how did you deal with this? Are you happy for people to connect with you?
Sure, I get that now. So, but yeah, definitely.
Awesome. I will pop the details below in our description there for that. Thank you so much for this conversation. It's been absolutely amazing. I look forward to connecting with you again sometime in the future. And goodbye for now.
Yay.